Hi, I'm producer Sabrina Sutherland, and I'm working with David on his David Lynch Theater project. And what I did was I posted a question. What questions do you have for David? And there were a lot of submissions. To be fair, I took a big bag, put all the questions in, and randomly selected some for David to answer here. There are a lot, or a lot of questions actually that weren't asked yet of David, so I will probably do that another time. But for now, here is David answering some of your questions. Thank you.
Is it counting?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, first question.
Hold on. Alrighty.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Bus Forrest asks.
Who was that?
Bus Forrest.
Bus Forrest.
Hello. What song has provided you with new ideas recently?
Bus Forrest asks, what song has provided me with ideas most recently? I heard a song called Sweet by Cigarettes After Sex, I think is the name of the group. I love this song, and the mood and the feel of this song is so great, in my opinion. And it provided some kind of a thing that's hopeful for the future.
Carol Ann asks, what inspired you to do a weather report?
Carol Ann asks, what inspired me to do a weather report? I'm not sure what inspired me way back when to start doing the weather report, except that people are very interested in weather, and it does something to people's awareness to learn about temperature and the look of the sky and the sun. It's just something that I think human beings like. And I thought it might be interesting to give a weather report of what was going on in terms of weather in Los Angeles.
Miles Molly asks, do you keep a dream diary? If so, do you write down all of your dreams or just the ones that stand out the most to you?
Miles Mollery?
Molly.
Miles Molly asks, do I keep a dream diary? And the answer is no. I've said many times before that I don't remember my dreams. I don't know if I have that many dreams. Once in a great while, I'll remember a dream, and very rarely have any dreams impacted my work. I like daydreaming. I like sitting quietly and daydreaming. And once in a while, I'll catch ideas that way. And if I catch an idea that I love, I definitely write it down. I've always said that if you get a good idea, you have to write it down immediately with words so that when you read those words again later, the idea will come back in full. If a person forgets an idea that they love, it's a horror, and it could lead to a real yearning to commit suicide.
Egregious Intent asks, what did you learn most from making your earliest short films?
Egregious Intent asks, what did I learn most from my earliest films? I started making films, I've told this story a bunch, because I wanted to see paintings move. What happened to me, though, when I started making films with stop motion, a love for this medium of film started growing, a love for it, and ideas started coming, ideas for cinema. And I always say that every medium that we have available is infinitely deep, and these mediums will talk to us. And once we start getting a dialogue with the mediums, ideas flow for them, and it's magical. So Egregious, I think I just became inspired, and a love grew for cinema.
Samuel Lichtenstein asks, what does David look forward to these days when everything feels so bleak?
Samuel Lichtenstein asks, what does David look forward to when everything these days seems so bleak? Samuel, I believe that we as a whole world are going through a transition, and these so-called bleak times are necessary to go through in order to get to a much, much, much better place. The old way is giving way to a new way, and it started a long time ago, the transition, and more things, horror stories have come to light, and people have been dealing with these things over the last decades, and more things will come out. These wrongs are going to start getting righted, and on the other side of this transition, I think we'll find really great times, an end to suffering and negativity. This is what I believe and hope for.
Mark J. Judge asks, before you were able to live off your art, what were your favorite and least favorite day jobs?
Mark J. Judge asks, before I was able to live off my art, what were my favorite day jobs? Well, I got fired from most every day job, Mark. I was not a very good employee. I had a night job delivering the Wall Street Journal during the filming of Eraserhead, and I did like that job. I worked 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, and I made enough money to live on. And I got my route down to 1 hour, flat out, 1959 Volkswagen. And it was a great job to have during the filming. sometimes I got some carpentry jobs and some roofing jobs. I always learned something from the jobs and met some interesting people. I have been so lucky, unbelievably lucky, that I was able to make money in things that I love to do.
Okay. So the Batman asks, what is the work you are most proud of? And he says, greetings from Italy.
The Batman asks, what is the work I'm most proud of? Well, I'm sort of proud of everything except Dune. I've liked so much working in different mediums. It's not a thing about pride, it's more like enjoyment of the doing, enjoyment of the work. And so I just have enjoyed working in all these different mediums, and I feel, again, really lucky to have been able to enjoy those things and be able to live.
Let's see. Oh, well, Harry Son 94. Where and when did you develop your passion for carpentry, general do-it-yourself projects?
Harry Sims?
Harry's Son 94.
Harry's Son 94 asks, when did I learn to enjoy carpentry and building, what do you call it?
Do-it-yourself projects.
Do-it-yourself projects. Harry's Son 94, I learned this from my father. Always growing up, we had a workshop in the house somewhere and tools, and it just was a thing. I think since my father grew up on a wheat ranch, on the ranch you, I guess, learned you had to build things yourself and be able to fix things, build things yourself. So I learned it from my father, but not only learned it, but, enjoyed it so much. So we're a project family. We love, just the word project makes us happy. Just the word project. If we had a billboard called Project, it would make us so happy.
AKA JK says, one of my favorite scenes in all of cinema is the In Dreams lip sync scene in Blue Velvet. How did you come up for the scene and the song choice?
Well, that's a long story. KJA asks about In Dreams in Blue Velvet. How did I come up with that scene and song? I'll tell the story again. I've told it before, but I was driving in a cab with Kyle MacLachlan in New York City. We were on our way to the airport to fly to Wilmington, North Carolina. In the cab going through Central Park, I heard, which I'd heard before, Roy Orbison singing Crying, his song Crying. And I thought, oh, this song could be in Blue Velvet. And so when we got down to Wilmington, I asked my trusted assistant, J.W., to get Roy Orbison's greatest hits. And he did get it, an album. And I put on Crying and listening to it, and it didn't hold the same thrill that it did in Central Park. It had diminished. But I kept listening to the album, and along comes a song, In Dreams. I almost went through the roof. This song just spoke that had to be in Blue Velvet. One thing led to another, and I got the idea that Dennis Hopper, Frank Booth, would sing this song. I called Dennis and told him about this and told him I'd get him the song. He could learn it, and he said, great. So Dean Stockwell was also in Blue Velvet and a longtime friend of Dennis's. And so they started rehearsing together this song. And it was on the afternoon, I believe, the day of the shooting or the day before. I got together with Dennis and Dean, and I wanted to make sure that Dennis had the song down. Dean was standing right there, having been working with Dennis, and we put the song on, and Dennis started lip syncing to it. But very quickly, it became apparent that Dennis hadn't quite remembered the lyrics. On the other hand, Dean was also lip syncing along, and he had those lyrics down perfectly. And I'm looking at Dennis now, looking at Dean while Dean is singing, and whoa, the whole thing. These things happen. We never know. A thing isn't finished till it's finished. New ideas can come along. A thing wants to be the way it wants to be. The roles were reversed. Dean sings it, and it was just so beautiful. And on top of that, the work light that Dean picks up to use as a microphone, no one knows how that got there. And it was going to be a light, but a small table light. But nothing could have been better than this work light. So it's one of these things, the magic of all these elements coming together in a certain way. It's ends up again reinforcing the idea of fate and luck play such a huge role in our lives.
Do you want to take a break? You want to stop, or you want to keep going? That's about 16 minutes.
We'll do a couple more questions, then take a break.
Okay, so let me find some more here. Dean Buckley asks, what sound brings you the most joy?
What sound?
What sound?
Dean Buckley asks, what sound brings me the most joy? That's a very tough question. Sound in general brings us all the possibility of huge joy. sound is so magical. It's one of the five senses, and hearing. And what we hear, how it works, is really magical. How does this vibration in the air go into the ear and travel deep in the brain and conjure a thing that we say is sound? It's just amazing. It's just amazing. I think I've gotten this question asked before in some way, and I always say that I do love the sound of a moaning wind.
Becky Ryan asks, what is David's favorite invention or experiment?
Becky Ryan asks, what is David's favorite invention or experiment? Oh man, I love just the word experiment as well as the word project. You could have another billboard just with the word experiment. So many things are found through experimenting. And so sometimes there are problems and we look for solutions. And in order to find the solution, we need to experiment. So you get an idea that you think would solve the problem, you start putting it to work, and then you realize, no, that's not quite it, and you get into experimenting until you find the way for the time being to solve the problem. One invention I had was one night in the house, it was raining, and some cable guy had drilled a hole through a waterproof membrane and hadn't patched up the hole once the cable was put in. So water was dripping through the ceiling, and the drops fell to the floor and made such a loud noise that it woke me up. So I started thinking, and I went in and I got a toilet paper roll and some wire, some nails, a hammer, and some tape, and a long length of my favorite string. And I cut the toilet paper roll and turned it into a funnel. Then I put a string into the toilet paper roll and out the hole at the bottom, and I hooked the wires to the top of the toilet paper roll and nailed the little funnel, cardboard funnel, into the ceiling, and the tape was to hold the funnel shape. And the wad of string inside the funnel, then the one string that came out went all the way down to the floor into a bucket. And I wet the string first. So the drop would come through the hole in the ceiling, go into the wet string, and then find its way, and it would guide the string would guide the water down silently into the bucket, and I was able to sleep peacefully. That was a great experiment and a solution to a problem. There have been others. I'll tell you about the rat trap, electric rat trap, at another time.
Let's see. Well, Alice Cooper asks, David, what is the most weird thing you have ever seen?
Alice Cooper asks, what is the most weird thing I have ever seen? I think we've all seen some weird things. I don't know what the weirdest thing I've ever seen is, though. Alice Cooper, I have to think about that. I don't know what that would be. I don't know what that would be. I promise you I'll think about it. If something comes to mind, I'll let you know at another time.
Connor asks, what was it like working with the famous Jack Cruz on What Did Jack Do?
Connor asks, what was it like working with the famous Jack Cruz on What Did Jack Do? Well, I found Jack to be a very interesting fellow, and I feel bad for Jack. I know that he was extradited down to Guatemala, and he's in a prison there waiting for a court date. I think that as a lounge singer, he's kind of incredible. He's not, technically in the big league, really, but he sings with such a feeling. He's a troubled fellow, and I think the troubles he's seen and felt come through in his singing. And I know that he has a loyal following. Not a large following, but loyal. And there's a lot of people that would like to see him get a fair shake and find out, what really happened that sent him to prison. We'll find out maybe one day.
Captain Negativity asks, how closely do your various finished projects tend to line up with whatever your initial idea might have been? Is the evolution of the idea part of the process, the entirety of the process, or altogether a disappointment?
Captain Negativity asks, how close is the finished thing to the idea that started it? And is there a process along the way? Captain Negativity, many times it's not even close to the original idea. I always say the original idea sometimes is just like a spark. It's a spark, enough of the idea and spark to get you out of the chair and start. And then a lot of mediums, from then on, it's action and reaction. It's a flow of ideas leading to the conclusion. And this action and reaction can happen in cinema in the catching of ideas that lead to a script. And so there's action and reaction on so many projects. And then even with a script, the final thing is different usually than the script would indicate, because there's things that are discovered along the way. Once in a great while, the idea is the final thing is so close to the original idea. Once in a great while, it's like it just walked out of the brain and onto the screen. But mostly there's a process of action and reaction that take it, as I say, sometimes far away from the original, sometimes not so far away, and once in a great while, it's exactly that.
Natalie Rovello says, no, so many things, but I think I'll just go with, how have you been? Hope all is well.
Natalie Rovella had possibly many questions, but she just asked, how have you been? Is everything going well? Natalie, I'm happy to say everything's going great, and thank you for asking.
All right. Let me see. Gabriel O. asks, what is a good way to generate new ideas?
Gabriel O. asks, what is a good way to generate ideas? There's a lot of different things that we can do to conjure some ideas. One is listening to music. Two would be daydreaming, sitting in a chair, or if you like, just wandering around. Daydreaming, just letting the mind wander here and there. If you want to expand the container, they say every human being has consciousness, but not every human being has the same amount. The potential, however, for every human being is infinite consciousness, unbounded consciousness, enlightenment. If you could expand and expand and expand that container, you can catch ideas on a deeper and deeper level. And they hold more information the deeper that you catch them. And they hold more of a thrill. The only way to get more consciousness, rather than stay the same with whatever consciousness you have, the only way to expand that consciousness is to transcend, to experience this level of life that underlies the field of relativity, unbounded consciousness is there. Unified field, modern quantum physics calls it. It's got many, many names, this field. Eternal field, never not been there, always will be there, always full. If a human being can get this technique of transcendental meditation, it's like then being given a key that opens the door to that field. So transcending means you've gone deep within, you're experiencing that field, and every time a human being experiences it, they infuse some, and they really and truly begin to expand that consciousness. I could talk a long time about this. So beautiful for the human being. Everything good in life comes from this field. It's our big friend. And it serves the life and it serves the work. And it really helps keep that conduit through which ideas flow open, wide open.
Do you want to end on that?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to sign off or anything?
Ladies and gentlemen, Sabrina's, I guess, run out of some questions for right now, and there's a whole bunch more, she says, so we'll try to do this question and answer session again, and in the meantime, I wish you all the very best.